Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
This is Sam. I just sent the new link out to everyone for the tribal bills.
I'd call the subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee to order. We're operating today as a subcommittee, although fully public, because we were unsure if we would have a quorum. Excuse me. So I guess before we get started, I will have the folks introduce themselves, beginning with Representative Harnett, perhaps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Tom Harnett. I represent House District 83, which is the town of Farmingdale and the city of Gardner, and I need a host to let me into the Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Sounds to me like somebody still has their microphone on. We're getting some echo.
Good morning, Representative Jeffrey Evangelos, House District 91, and my computer's warming up. I'll be with you in a minute.
Mike Carpenter, Senate District 2, Prescott to Patton. I'm the Senate Chair of this crowd.
Good morning. My name is Donna Bailey. I represent House District 14, which is part of the amazing city of Saco, and I am the House Chair.
Barbara Cardone, House District 127, Bangor.
Senator Bellows?
Yes, Senator Shenna Bellows, Senate District 14, which is 11 towns in southern Kennebec County.
Representative Reckitt?
This is Lois Reckitt. I'm the representative from District 31 in South Portland. And me and my breathing are home. So glad to be with you.
I think that's all the committee members we have so far. We are staffed by incredibly capable young women. Peggy Reinsch is our analyst. Sue Panett is our committee clerk. They'll keep us straight and out of trouble here today. We have a number of members of the tribal community who are joining us. I'm going to wait for a bit if I can. We're not going to take up the tribal bills till 10. So when we pause the rest of our work and get back to the tribal bills, I'll have those folks introduce themselves. You're welcome to stay on, obviously, and watch our deliberations on the other stuff. Peggy, you're on.
Great. So we set aside this time this morning to look at some amendments that you had voted on last week, but you didn't have the final language. So you should have a packet that's got a big paper clip on it. I did email these out, so hopefully Representative Reckitt can access it. We're posting it to our webpage for anybody else who's listening who wants to look at them. So if you need to make changes that require a vote, you're going to have to wait until another day, obviously. But so why don't we just take them in numerical order? LB 302 is the newly discovered evidence bill. And there's a majority report and a minority report. Senator Keim and Representative Hagan added some language. They knew they wanted to do something a little different, and Senator Keim worked with the Attorney General's office. So if you look at the majority report, I think all that's changed is really we put all the pieces together. So we struck out paragraph C in section 1, and the new subsection 1A, which is no filing deadline based on newly discovered evidence. We said the court may require the petitioner to provide additional information about the nature of the newly discovered evidence. And then we also said if somebody had filed a petition before that had been denied because it was dismissed because it was untimely filed or for the failure to exercise due diligence, that does not stop somebody from filing a petition under this again to give it a chance to be heard on the merits of the petition. So that was the majority report. So the minority report is just the same, except if you turn over to page 2, there is an additional sentence. The court may it's in italics. The court may summarily dismiss the petition if it determines that the petitioner has not made a prima facie showing that the new evidence was material and would have affected the verdict. So that's language comes from the Attorney General's office. I don't know if that actually changes the practice of what the majority report would require. But it's very specific about that.
It would seem to me that if the minority report language said that if the petitioner has not made a prima facie showing that the new evidence was material and might have affected the verdict, is a whole lot different than would have affected the verdict. I think would have affected the verdict puts a burden on the justice to make a, I think you won't see, under this, I don't think you would see any petitions, or rarely would you see a petition granted, because the judge would have to find that it would have. So the judge is going to have to get in the mind of 12 jurors and decide that this would have changed their mind, which I think is a very, very high hurdle on that, but in terms of the practical effect of this. So, but I'm not going with the minority report anyway, so why am I talking about it? Representative Evangelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sat in on the whole process, and Mr. Maycumber was on record as saying that the Attorney General took no position on the bill, so I'm surprised to learn that they've modified language here, if that's the contention. I don't know if we need an explanation for that, but that was his position, quote unquote. The Attorney General's office is not taking a position on this bill.
Are there any further questions about the language we have in front of us?
And I do not have a fiscal analysis complete yet.
Okay. There's no need to vote again on this unless somebody wants to change their position, correct?
Right.
We've already voted on it. All right. Thank you, Peg.
Okay, the next one in your pile is LD 1421. This is an act to amend the bail code. There are very few changes from the earlier draft that you talked about, that you had in front of you last week. And I did send this out to, I think, the people that had participated. And I got okays back from people who responded. So I did just send it out last night, so it might be more time needed. So the changes are in italics, and the big question was, the bill says no cash bail may be required for Class E crimes, except in certain circumstances. And in section 2, and we'll see it later in the amendment, those circumstances are when the Class E crime is, 1, a violation of Title 17A, Chapter 11, that's sexual assaults. 2, it was committed against a family or a household member or a dating partner. 3, it was a violation of a condition of release committed while the defendant was released on bail for a charge that involved any of these, what we just talked about. So the same, a sexual assault, a crime against a family or household member, or a dating partner. And last, the number 4 is what you talked about and spent a lot of time and decided that this made sense, that it's a violation of section 1091 subsection 1, which is failure to appear. So
Hold on,
if
Peggy, would you hold just for a second?
Yep.
Mr. Lopez or somebody from IT, could you join us in the room? One of our members is having a problem with the Zoom link. Sorry, go ahead, Peg.
thanks.
Yeah.
So subparagraph 4, it was always supposed to be focused on failure to appear. And you made it clear that this should apply when the Class E crime that's being charged is a failure to appear. So we made that language parallel with 1, 2, and 3, that the crime is a violation of failure to appear. It's a Class E crime. It's a Class E crime failure to appear for certain crimes. It's a Class D crime if it's failure to appear for A, B, and C's, I think. So we're not talking about those. We're only talking about whatever is a Class E crime for failure to appear. So that language is at the top of page 2, and you'll see that exact same language at the bottom of page 5. So the first one is bail commissioners. The second one is when a judge is setting bail. So that's the first change. You agreed with all the changes in the conditions, I believe. And then the other change that you talked about is on page 6. And these are the history and characteristics of the defendant that whoever's setting bail can take into account. And this is section 5 of the amendment. You agreed to strike out the defendant's family ties in the state, subparagraph 2, and then you amended sub 5. So the defendant's length of residence in the community and the defendant's ties to the community or in the state. So that kind of pulled together the kind of basis of subsection 2 without saying it has to be a family tie.
Is anybody else bothered by in the state? I still think that should be to the state.
Want it to be to the state?
Thank you. Grammatically, it just looks awkward. In the, thank you.
Okay. And that's it. The minority report is ought not to pass. Do you have any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So are you ready to move on?
Hold on just a second, Peggy.
Yeah.
We're still struggling with the, Jeff, are you out at the moment as well? Oh, okay, there we go. Admit, okay. Donna? Jeff? Vice Chief Newell, welcome back.
So if you don't mind, Representative Hagan is calling me, so.
Go ahead. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, sir.
We'll get back to you about 10, but you're welcome to sit around and join us.
Oh, 10, yeah, I thought it was 9.
Now, you're a little early, yeah?
Thought I was
We started on some other stuff unrelated to the tribal stuff. Are you all set, Peg?
Yes, Representative Hagan was using the old link and he was trying to sign in, and
Okay.
he is opening his ledge mail and will try to join us.
Okay.
Okay. So, so the last bill I have for you this morning is LD 2102, an act to implement the recommendations of the Right to Know Advisory Committee. So this was one of the bills where you you agreed to add the fiscal note, the appropriation of $33,000. There's a majority report and a minority report. What the majority report includes is language about including diversity in the appointments. And I actually gave you 2 options here because you folks talked about adding that into the very first subsection of section 411. And the other place you could put it is where you're talking about the membership. So I think structurally, from a drafting perspective, it makes sense to put it in the discussion of who the members are and what has to be taken into account when they're being appointed. However, I understand that this is a policy statement, and if you think it needs to be in subsection 1, I think you can make that policy decision. So I gave it to you both ways. So you'll see the little or bar. So section 1 above the or is in the advisory committee established subsection. If you turn the page, you'll see that that same language is a blocked paragraph to, it would be a block paragraph to subsection 2. Subsection 2 is all about the membership, who's on it, who's appointed. And
And you think from a drafting perspective, it probably should be in subparagraph 2, after the list of people.
right, if you're not thinking about what it's, you know, the policy behind it, I would say that's definitely where it needs to be.
Again-
If you want to make another statement about it, if you want to emphasize, I suppose you can put it in that first subsection, although that first subsection is really about the freedom of access law and the integrity of the whole
Okay.
public transparency process.
Okay. Again, I must be having a picky morning, but I like the language shall take into consideration better than must take into consideration.
I understand that. However, this is actually passive language. You can only use shall. It's passive language. You can only use shall when you're telling somebody to do it. So if you want to say,
Nope.
if you want to say the appointing authorities shall take into consideration, we can do that.
No, that's fine.
So I can be picky too.
Other comments or questions?
And I realize what this actually leaves out is this this amendment also, the bill adds one more person to the Right to Know Advisory Committee, which is not portrayed here. Somebody who has experience with personal privacy data issues. So the minority report is the same, but it does not include the diversity language.
Okay.
And I see Representative Hagan has found the correct link.
Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Okay, we're all set with that.
So the minority report is there, and all it's doing is adding the appropriation section and the fiscal note.
Is that it?
Yes, although I just got a text message from Representative Babbage, who's trying to zoom in and he's not using the right link. So I will let him know. And that's all I have right now. We can talk about whatever you want, or you can take a break.
We'll take a break. We'll be back at 10 o'clock, unless you have something we need to talk about.
Nope.
The
Okay.
question.
Yes, who had a question?
It's Lois Record.
Hello.
Hi, my question is, I gather that we can't officially do these things today because there's only 6 people in the room. Is that true? So does that mean we're going to try to do them tomorrow? I mean, Friday? Or is it doesn't have to do, I don't understand the process.
You mean the stuff
So
that
these are language reviews that don't require a vote.
Oh, okay.
So these are, I have sent them out in email. So if anybody has a problem that isn't on this call, on this Zoom meeting, they can let me know and I can try to resolve it, or we can bring it up on Friday.
Yeah, no, I did find the email with them on it, then I eventually lost it, but I did print out one, so before I lost
Okay.
it. So
Okay,
anyway,
they-
that's fine. I just want to make sure that we didn't have to delay this any longer than necessary.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we
Yes.
doing or did you already do the reviews that Representative Hartnett did for us?
Oh, the right to know analysis.
Yeah.
There we go. I don't think we have to on that bill, correct, Peggy?
So what I sent you last night and what's now posted on the legislature's, the Judiciary Committee's webpage are the memos from the committees that were asking for you to do their freedom of access reviews because they contain new public records exceptions.
Mhm.
Representative Harnett has gone through all of those. And he even took them to camp this weekend.
I did a heck of a
And,
job. I just read them this morning. They're excellent.
Right, so I sent you the memos where he has basically signed off on all of them. We think that the committees have figured out what works.
Mhm.
And so you can read his memos, you can read the memos from the committees. If you want to spend more time, if you want to talk about them, we can do that. I'm not sure that he's ready to talk about them right now, but if you'd like to, I'm happy to go through any of them. The idea was to do them by email.
Yeah, no, I read them this morning and they're perfectly fine. And I just wanted to make sure that they were all done and that I had a half a second to thank Representative Hartnett for doing that because they are my least favorite things.
That and road bills.
That road bills, yeah. Don't get me started. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the subcommittee meeting of the Judiciary Committee. We have had a few other folks join us. One more committee member has joined us, Representative David Hagan of Hamden. David, would you just introduce yourself?
I will. Hi, I'm David Hay. I represent Hamden and Newburgh, and it's nice to see you all.
Nice to be seen. Uh-oh. Okay, so I just got kicked out. Nah. But now it looks like they're trying to reconnect me. Everybody be patient here. All right. Okay. I don't know what's happening. Let me try this again. Okay. Are you still on? Guess that makes me more important, huh? I'm connecting. So, whoops. I'm going to try one more time to go. I jumped out, now I'm coming back. Yeah, I might need Roy Roy, you're within the sound of my voice. Sorry to bother you, but, oh, hold on. Now I got a password showing up. Let me see if I can get in. I agree. No, it's not working. Mr. Lopez, here he comes. All right, now just you watch. Just that you're walking in here now. Now it's asking for my password. Oh, magic. Just him showing up took care of it. Oh, hold on. Now this is what I've been getting. Oh, okay. Now it's gonna maybe come back. My apologies to everybody waiting. I'm trying to get in here. Mr. Lopez is going to. I think what I better do is ask him to come back and make you, or do whatever he has to do to make you a co-host. Oh, you did? Still not working. Pardon? It's still not working, Mr. Lopez. Yeah. No, I won't. He ran upstairs to do something though.
Senator Carpenter, I'm hearing from a couple other people that they're having trouble getting in with the updated link as well.
I didn't understand a word of that.
Sorry, this is Sam. I'm hearing from a couple other people that they're also having trouble getting in with the updated link. So there may be something more pervasive going on.
There we go. Oh, great, this is on my. Oops.
Senator Carpenter and Representative Bailey, I have multiple emails coming in that folks are not able to get into the Zoom call. So there is something going on. And I am emailing Stacy, if you're on the call, or Roy, we are having, folks are having trouble getting in with the new link.
Sam, just so you know, part of it may be that they're in queue and Mike
Okay.
hasn't been able to get on and I wasn't made a
Okay.
co-host. So
Okay.
it may be that they're waiting. We can't tell. He's going to try to put me on as a co-host so I can see if they're there just waiting to be admitted.
Okay.
But Mike hasn't been able to get on. So that may be it. I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll email folks and let them know to hang on a few minutes and see if we can figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
I've just admitted Chief Francis and the two Corys, so we should be, my apologies. I have been having major problems with my computer. Chief Francis, can you hear us?
I can, Senator. Thank you.
Hey, welcome. Sorry about that. We've been really struggling here. Corey Hinton, Corey, California, Corey West Coast. And I see, who else do I see? Okay. Allison. Oh, you're, okay.
Yep.
Who's letting these people in? Okay, so we just made Representative Bailey a co-host over my objections. Toby, welcome, Toby. I see you there now. Okay. Because I was somewhere wandering in the wilderness. All right. So, welcome back. My apologies for being 12 minutes late, but we've been having problems with the link here. I'll try to keep an eye. Chris Taub coming in. So, where we're going to begin this morning is to sort of take a look at what our options are going forward. And Peggy has done an analysis for us, a copy of which you should have in your paperwork. At this point, as probably most of you know, there's no agreement for the legislature to come back into session this year. The political leadership is working on that. It's outside of our control. But Representative Bailey and I are determined not to lose the momentum that we had back in March. An incredible amount of work put in by Sam and Peggy from our staff and all of the folks from the Attorney General's office, the tribes, the tribal attorneys, and everybody else. We're not going to lose that. We're going to try to figure out how to contain that and move forward with an eye toward, at a minimum, passing something if the legislature comes back into session. I run into people quite often that want to know how things are going on this or other legislation, and I try to explain to them the legislature is not in session, has not been in session since mid-March. That's very important. So we ask you to be patient with us as we try to move forward. It is my understanding, and we'll hear from these folks in a little bit, it is my understanding that the tribal leadership and the attorneys have met twice within the last week with the governor's office and the attorney general's office in what were described to me as positive meetings. That's wonderful news, truly is. And we'll hear from them in a bit. Peggy, do you want to, unless somebody has a better way to move forward here, I would ask Peggy to walk us through what the options are for the Representative Cardone, sorry.
It's not clear to me that we received what you are talking about, or at least I don't have a paper copy of it.
Oh,
Right,
Or
so
if I do, I don't know where it is.
Senator Carpenter, are you talking about, I had put together something about options for continuing the task force's work?
yes.
Is that what you want to talk about? I'm happy to talk about it. We did not circulate that. I'm happy to, we can email that and copy it and hand it out if you want.
Why don't you have that done? As you're having that done, we would ask perhaps the attorneys for the tribe and Chris Taub from the Attorney General's office to describe for us what has transpired over the last couple of days. And then we can come back to the mechanical piece in a little bit when everybody has a copy of it. Thank you, Representative Cardone. Chris or Corey Hinton, do you want to lead off and tell us what's transpired as far as discussions?
Yeah, I can start, I guess. So we've had a series. So it started with Kim and myself having a series of phone conversations with counsel from the tribes, and I think we had maybe 3 of those, or maybe 4. I can't remember exactly. And they were fairly all long conversations. I think we probably spent 6 to 7 hours having some discussions. And then this week, the governor's office joined in those discussions. So we had some conversations, let's see, today is Wednesday, right? So we had some conversations on Monday, I believe, and then we had some more conversations on yesterday. And so we've sort of talked about some sort of broad topics that at least we think there's some room that we can make some meaningful progress on. And I can just tell you sort of what the broad areas are, and then I'm happy to discuss details, or if Corey or someone else wants to discuss that, I'm happy to yield the floor. But sort of the broad areas that we've been discussing are an expansion of criminal jurisdiction, an expansion, or not, I guess not expansion is the right word, but making some changes to the tax laws to give more favorable treatment to certain tribal activities. And there's also been some discussion about land acquisition, allowing the tribes to petition the Secretary of the Interior to take additional lands into trust. And we've also just had very preliminary discussions, and I think we need to sit down some more to talk this through, but there have also been some very preliminary discussions about making some amendments with respect to the regulation of fishing, hunting, and trapping. So let me just stop there and see if any of the tribal folks want to add or correct me or supplement what I just said.
Thank you, Chris. Would one of the attorneys for the tribe who actually were in the discussions or part of the discussions give us your perspective?
Hi, I'd be happy to add on to that. Chris did a good job of summarizing at a high level what we've been talking about. We mentioned last week that the AG's office and the tribal attorneys had been meeting for, we'd met 3 times over 3 weeks, about 6 hours of meetings. It was after the work session on Friday. Actually, we'd already scheduled a meeting with the governor's office for Monday as of Friday. We had that meeting, and then by the end of the night on Monday, we had an agreement from the governor's staff to meet with the tribal attorneys again. Now, the AG's office and the tribal attorneys, we've been scheduling these weekly standing meetings, and we had that meeting set for yesterday, and I was encouraged to learn that we'd be joined in that meeting by several of the governor's staff, including her legal advisors and policy advisors. So yesterday we had the second of those meetings. So over 2 days we've met for 3 total hours. And Chris is right in saying that we've discussed taxation and criminal jurisdiction. I would say that there's been quite a bit of fleshing out around the governor's proposal for where there might be room for agreement on taxation and on criminal jurisdiction. The governor has made clear that there are some areas where, or the governor's staff has made clear that there are some areas where agreement is unlikely during this legislative session. And then there are some other issues that the governor's staff and the governor still need to discuss. And those general categories would be consultation, federal beneficial laws, and land use and natural resources. The governor's staff did commit to having discussions with her as early as today. We did, before concluding our meeting yesterday, set 2 additional meetings. So we are scheduled to meet today at 2 p.m. and tomorrow at 3 p.m. The goal being to have, I want to say an agreement, but be moving closer to an agreement. Everyone's working towards Friday, knowing that the committee is expecting to wrap up its work by then. So we are working pretty feverishly to advance those discussions, and I would agree that they've been fruitful to this point.
Thank you, Corey. Nice to see you. So do Allison or the other Corey or Chief, either of the chiefs that are on here, any of you want to jump in and augment, supplement anything that either Chris or Corey have said?
This is Allison Binney, Mr. Chairman. The only thing, and I would defer to the chiefs, but the only thing I think I'd like to add to that is, we left last week's Judiciary Committee work session, hearing the remarks made by some of the members about whether all of LD 2094 can get passed in the special session. So I think really the goal of the conversations this week with both the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office has been to figure out what issues we think can get addressed in the special session, but with the understanding that that's not the end of the dialogue, that, with the pandemic hitting, there just hasn't been enough time for, main revenue service and other people to, be able to go through all the provisions. So I think, it's really been focused on, where do we think we can come up with language on what issues for a special session, with the understanding that we'll continue to work either through a task force, MIXIC, or something else over the remainder of this year, so that for the next legislative session, we'll have additional issues addressed. And I think from the tribal leader standpoint, we've been keeping them in the loop as we are with you about how those discussions are going. But ultimately, I think the tribal leaders have to make a decision about whether what's their request of the Judiciary Committee. But yeah, I think the issues that were discussed by Mr. Hinton and Mr. Taub are the ones that we're making progress on. And we haven't really been able to fully discuss the remaining issues that Mr. Hinton pointed out. And so we are hoping to have some more dialogue today and tomorrow, with understanding that the Judiciary Committee needs to act on Friday.
Thank you, Ms. Binney. Let me put you folks on the spot. Do you think on the issues of criminal jurisdiction and taxation, and I haven't been privy to your discussions, but do you think between now and Friday, you would be able to come up with some language that we could consider on Friday? I mean, the task force and this committee have been instrumental in bringing us to this point. After that, I mean, now that something has begun, I'm perfectly happy to step back and let you folks flesh things out and then bring them back to us. As several of you noted, Friday is our last day. So Mr. Taub or Mr. Hinton or Ms. Binney or whoever, do you think, hold on one second. I'm sorry. Right, yep. And I don't want to leave out my friend Linda Pisner, who's on as well. So I'll include her in that. I didn't mean to glump her in with the Attorney General's office, although she was there for a day or two. So back to my question, do you think between now and Friday, the parties might be able to come up with language that we could work on Friday? I'll turn to Mr. Taub first because he was the first speaker, or Ms. Pisner, whichever.
I think, I mean, it's going to be a tall order, but I'm optimistic that we could come back by Friday with some language, if not on all of the issues that I mentioned, at least on some of them. I think to some extent, we probably have a better idea after we have our meeting this afternoon. But I guess the short answer is, I think there's a good chance that we could come back with some language by Friday.
Linda, Ms. Pisner, do you have a thought on that? You're muted.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
There you go.
I think, Allison, are you going ahead? I'm not hearing well, so I'm sorry to jump in on you if you were about to speak. Okay.
I wasn't, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here, and part of that is it depends who's speaking, so I apologize for that. The governor, I think, is very keen for us to continue to work. And so we will do everything that we can do between now and Friday to come up with something that we could bring to you on Friday. Having said that, though, and I want to also say that our conversations have been very amicable and interesting and effective. And so I have considerable optimism that we're moving in the right direction. The question then is how to proceed from there with some of the other issues. And I haven't had a chance to digest the document that is being looked at today, but I think that clearly there will be a need for some working group. The work group that we've effectively created this week has been very useful so far, and then bring proposals, however that's structured, to bring proposals back to the task force to continue is the goal.
Thank you. Tribal attorneys or chiefs want to weigh in from your perspective about between now and Friday?
I don't know. This is Allison Benny. I don't know if one of the chiefs want to weigh in. The only thing I would add on the tax issues that, you know, one of the fundamental principles from the tribal perspective is just to make sure that the sovereignty of both sides are respected. And so the way the Maine Implementing Act works right now is once changes are made and all parties, you know, consent to them, then changes can't be made unless all parties consent to changes. So we just want to make sure when it comes to the tax issues that it's done in a fashion that both sides agree with, but that future legislatures couldn't undo without the consent of the tribes. I think that, you know, so that's where I think we're trying to come up with language that does that, but also respects the sovereignty of the state in addition to the sovereignty of the tribes. So I think, you know, we'll have to flesh that out in the next 24 to 48 hours. But I also just don't know, you know, I see we have several chiefs on the call, so I defer to them to say something.
Would either of the chiefs like to jump in?
Sure. Thank you, Senator Carpenter. I don't have a lot to add to that, except we've been fully briefed on the conversations that have taken place. I think I first want to say that I've appreciated Mr. Taub and the AG's office for their steadfast engagement on this for the last 15 months. And I think, you know, I think from a tribal leader perspective, you know, legal representation and that whole approach and all of that is really about figuring out what the path forward is and understanding the process and all those things. But I think from our perspective, I'd just like to reiterate a couple things that have been said. One, I think it's a little bit disappointing to the tribal leaders, I think, to hear that there's a kind of a piecemeal approach being taken now. And I think it's it may be just the practical reality of things and all of that. But I would reiterate the fact that I think it's going to be extremely important for the tribal leaders to have an understanding of exactly what the commitment is going forward if we're not going to take up this bill after, you know, dozens of sessions and again, being 15 months into it, feeling very prepared to move forward with the bill in its entirety, thousands of dollars in resources. So we would really like to, and countless man hours, of course, with our teams. But I think it's going to be really important to figure out what that commitment is. And I know that's a difficult thing for one legislature to do to another and all of those things. But there are some important issues that are clearly going to get left on the table here. And so that's a bit disappointing. But at the same time, we're committed to this process, obviously. We want to find a path forward. And I speak for myself. I see Chief Sabatis is on the phone, who does quite well representing her people. So I would defer to her for her comments. But but that's all I really wanted to say, Senator, is we really would like to see or have an understanding of what that commitment is going forward. Because if it can't be an assurance on that piece, then it puts us in a different mindset as to where we kind of want to go with the bill in these next couple days, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief
Chief Sabatis. Yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add. I'm on the same page with Chief Francis. It's kind of a tough thing to swallow after all. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing you twice. Hearing you twice. So you could mute. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Go ahead, Chief. Go ahead.
I don't think it's me.
Okay, that's better. That's better.
Okay. I was just saying that I'm on the same page as Chief Francis. This obviously breaking this up into pieces is not the path that we had ever intended. And it's hard to it would be really nice to know what kind of commitment. I agree with him. I think, I don't know what else I can add to what's already been said. I do appreciate all the work that's taken place. And again, I'll reiterate what he did. I think that we've seen a big change since we've had a commitment from the AG's office to sit down with us and start talking about language. I kind of felt like we were spinning our wheels until that started happening. So I do appreciate their commitment to our team and the time they've spent with them to go through these issues. So again, I don't think I have much more to add other than that, but I would like to know, what the path forward is going to be and not walk away until we have some sort of commitment.
We're not going to walk away. I can promise you that. Ms. Minnie or either the tribal attorneys want to add?
Okay.
Representative Bailey and I met briefly with representatives of the governor's office this morning, and there's certainly a commitment there on their part to move forward and maybe even. I'm sorry, I'm still getting an echo here. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it is off. It is off. It is off.
It is off. Yes, it's off. Hang on a second. Let me mute.
There, is that better? The sound was off, but I had not muted myself. Okay, so in speaking with the governor's office this morning, I believe there's a commitment there to continue the dialogue and to formalize it in some sort of a way so we can make sure we go forward. So I guess it would be my suggestion, I look to the committee members, the task force members, to allow the parties to try to come up with some language for us to review on Friday. If everybody's okay with that, then we would turn to exploring options about how we keep this process. Senator Bellows, I'll come with you in just a minute. How we keep this process alive going forward into and through the next legislative session. Obviously, we don't know who's going to be here, but the momentum that we've had to this point cannot be lost. Senator Bellows.
Thank you, Senator Carpenter. I have just two questions for both the Attorney General's office and the tribal chiefs and or attorneys and the governor's office about these negotiations. My first question is, I've watched with concern during the pandemic, the lack of allocation of resources to the tribes. And I just have some real concerns that Maine tribes are not treated like other tribes federally because of that lack of recognition. And so one of the pieces in the amendment that we were working on, and it was an amendment, I had offered some language that the committee had been looking at back in February. But one of the very first pieces was that the purpose of amendments to this chapter is to establish that the tribes enjoy rights, privileges, powers, duties, and immunities similar to those of other federally recognized Indian tribes, and that except as otherwise specified in this chapter, federal Indian law applies with regards to rights, privileges, powers, duties, and immunities. And I guess my question is this even part of the discussion? And if it's not, what does that mean as the federal government is passing relief packages and investment packages? Are the Maine tribes getting left out because of our failure to act in that way? And then I have one more question, Senator Carpenter, about the details of the negotiations.
Okay, let's deal with the first question first. Can I turn to the tribal attorneys and ask if have been any impediments put in front of the tribes with regard to pandemic relief caused by language in the implementing act?
And I'll take a stab to start at that. I would say, generally speaking, the laws that have been passed by Congress in response to the pandemic have in varying ways been responsive to the needs of tribal governments. And there has been relief that has been made available to tribal governments through laws like the CARES Act, for example. And the tribes have not been left out of that as a result of the Settlement Act. I would note, though, that we're in a situation where there's been a national disaster declared by the president pursuant to a law called the Stafford Act. The Stafford Act was amended several years ago to provide that tribal governments ought to be able to declare their own natural disasters when the president or the United States has not done so. Until the president declared a disaster because of COVID-19, the Maine tribes were effectively without a mechanism to declare their own emergency and to use that declaration to link to direct assistance with FEMA. That's a direct result of the Maine Indian Claim Settlement Act. That's a direct result of the provisions that were added at the last minute at the federal law that prevent laws from general applicability from applying in Maine if they would preempt with the laws of Maine. So I would say that there's been some wrinkles in how the tribes have been able to respond to the pandemic, but generally the tribes have been, and I won't speak for all of the tribes, but I know the CARES Act was intended to deliver benefits to all federally recognized tribal governments. And our governments have been working extraordinarily hard with federal and state partners as the ongoing pandemic response unfolds. But, I would add to that, though, that there are public health crises that have been unfolding in the state of Maine and that were unfolding in the state of Maine prior to this pandemic. I've noted it on several occasions in this committee, but I was told by the state's drinking water program director just a couple of months ago that the drinking water situation at Pleasant Point is an ongoing public health crisis. That's a public health crisis that we've talked about here. We've talked about how changes to the Settlement Act would effectively allow the tribes to solve problems like this. And so while everyone's focused on the pandemic, and while we at the tribal level are working very, very hard to keep our communities safe, we're also grappling with these other public health crises that have only been exacerbated because of the situation that we're in. So, it's fine to look at COVID-19, but the scope of the problems that we're dealing with certainly began before that. Thank you.
And this is Allison Binney. I would just add that I do think the pandemic is a good example of how the Maine tribes are treated different than tribes outside of Maine. There was some confusion, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, about sort of where do the tribes go for assistance. Clearly, the 1980 Settlement Act was drafted, in my view, in a way to really make the tribes of Maine dependent on the state. But when the pandemic hit, it was the federal government. And if you look at the 1980 Settlement Act, those provisions were clearly drafted to sort of cut the federal government out of Indian country in Maine. And so, I'm the federal representative in council for Penobscot. And so, my job is to, primarily communicate with Congress and advocate for our interests in Washington, D.C. And maybe just because that's what I know best, instantly when the pandemic hit, the federal people reached out because they were reaching out to every federally recognized tribe. And I would say for the first month, there was actually some back and forth with the federal agencies about, is it the federal government or the state government that has responsibility to respond and help the Maine tribes because of the Settlement Act. Like that dialogue definitely happened in Washington, D.C. I know that Penobscot has been able to get, the bulk of the resources have come from the federal government, because the federal government had not made any distinctions between any federally recognized tribes. But ultimately, when this legislation moves, the preference was all federally recognized tribes get equal access to the funds that are available for all federally recognized tribes. And that's how Congress decided to treat it. But there were discussions back on when the CARES Act was getting negotiated for pretty much the bulk of March about, where do the Maine tribes go for help. And I do know that the Penobscot's been having, I think, I know Ambassador Dana's on this call. I know they've been having regular discussions with the governor's office to try to, figure out how the state can help them with their remaining unmet needs. But I do think it's indicative of the Settlement Act, this sort of, bifurcated responsibility between the state and the federal government, and the feds wondering sort of where their role is. So it comes up in criminal jurisdiction. The feds have no responsibility for criminal jurisdiction in Maine on Indian country, but they do still have federal responsibility for crimes that happen outside of Indian country in Maine. So the federal government's role in Maine is sort of, it's sort of bifurcated between Indian country and non-Indian country. So my only point is the Settlement Act does in its current form create obstacles. We overcome them. I don't know if Chief Francis feels differently than what I'm saying, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job of overcoming them when it comes to the pandemic. But definitely it took work. So I think modernizing the Settlement Act is needed, as we all know. And I think that, doing so now and keeping the momentum going is critical.
I would just add, I agree with all of that. There's just this other layer of work that always has to be done to try to get the tribes included in things and benefiting from all of this. And if we didn't have the representation that we have on this call here today, the Maine tribes would undoubtedly be left behind in a lot of this stuff. So I know the work that goes in from both Corey's and Allison and everyone when these bills are starting to hit, and they always have to get in those offices very early. Don't forget about the Maine tribes, so there's just always this other layer of work that has to be done to respond to how the tribes in Maine can benefit from all of these things. And because of their hard work, as they've mentioned, we were able to be in those formulas and able to receive some assistance.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Ms. Binney. Representative Evangelos, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. We've done an incredible amount of work, and I guess my question is around, I guess I'm naive, but I need some guidance on a couple of things. First of all, if somebody can answer why we have an imposed deadline of Friday, why we can't keep working when the gravity of the importance of the work we've done, as Chief Francis said, we're so close. And if perhaps Ms. Pissner could give us some guidance on when the governor would call us back into session, because it seems to me that if our session is still delayed, it appears the two political parties aren't going to come to an agreement, but the governor has the constitutional authority to call us in herself. So it's two-pronged. Why do we have to stop working on Friday? It's a self-imposed deadline. We can keep working. I'll come every time on this important issue. And then if we can get some guidance on when we're going back into session, we can push our Friday deadline out further and continue to work so that we can be voting on a package instead of this piecemeal approach. It just seems like we're in the 14th round of a 15-round fight, and the corner is throwing the towel in on us. And I think we need to keep working. As long as we're not going into session next week, let's get some guidance on this. I mean, I can't get any answers, so I'm posing the second question regarding the session to Linda Pisner, and I'll just ask the chairs, can't we make a request to continue to work? Thank you.
Let me answer that question. Senator Bellows, I apologize. I knew you had a second question. I'll come back to you in a minute. I don't know. I haven't explored with my leadership about the possibility of continuing to work into next week or whenever. If we have something to work toward, in other words, if the folks who we've been talking to this morning aren't able to come to agreed upon language by Friday, I certainly would have no problem whatsoever approaching my leadership. At this point, I think an August session being called by the legislative leadership is probably remote. I have no idea what I don't really think it's fair to put Ms. Pisner on the spot here this morning. I'm assuming she didn't come prepared to speak for the governor about whether or not she's going to call the legislature back into session. She can answer the question if she wants, but a little bit unfair perhaps. That's up to the governor. If she wants to call us back, we need to be ready to go. And therefore, if there's a need for further work sessions on this bill, then I'm certainly willing to ask for that from my leadership. And I look to my co-chair, Representative Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are already past the deadline when we were supposed to have our work done. So we can certainly ask, but I'm not optimistic that we're going to get permission to do that because, again, we've already gone past the deadline and because we needed the extra time for the work that we had to do. I'm not opposed to asking, but I know that, I mean, it's not just bringing us physically here, it's the work that goes along with that. And so, again, we can ask, but my understanding from my leadership is that we were supposed to have all bills reported out, I think, as of yesterday. I know we're past the deadline anyways. So we're already pushing the limits, if you will.
So I think what I'm going to ask is that, I'm sorry, Senator Bellows. I keep forgetting.
Sorry, I had two more questions under, and operating under the assumption that the governor's office, the AG's office, and tribal attorneys and chiefs are going to have some meetings to try to get to something potentially, although like Representative Evangelos, I was ready to vote on the whole package that was existing where we were back in March. But that said, so we didn't hear to follow up on my first question, we didn't hear from the governor's office or the AG's office with regards to that language. I mean, right now, the Settlements Act treats the tribes almost as municipalities, right? Under the jurisdiction of the state, rather than recognizing the sovereignty that other federal tribes observe or is naturally recognized. And there had been some language that I had offered up, and I know the AG's office was looking at it and trying to think through alternative language. It was in section 6202, subsection 1, and I'm just putting it in the chat so to refresh everybody's memory. But my question is, is that something that's off the table entirely, or is that something that you're willing to look at, that federal recognition piece of rights, privileges, immunities, and duties for this negotiation language? And then I still have my second question that's for everyone. But I'd love to hear from the governor's office and the AG's office about that question about the status. And again, it was.
I know Miss. I know Ms. Tissner will want a response and trying to talk. That's the language that we're going over.
Thank you. We haven't reached that piece in our discussions with the tribal attorneys in the AG's office. I will say, though, that in response to your first question, which it's important to understand that the state did not get any money on COVID until there was a federal declaration of disaster. The tribes were not the only ones waiting. You probably recall sometimes when you've seen horrible floods going on in certain states that the federal government says, oh, it's a disaster and we're declaring a major disaster. That's what allows the FEMA money to flow. So we weren't getting it either. That was a precondition of anybody getting that money. But your second question, yes, we're definitely going to have discussion of that. And that will be part of what we report on later in the week.
Senator Bellows, before you come back with your fifth or sixth question, I've
Part 1, A and B, and then part 2.
Representative DeVoe has joined us. Would you just introduce yourself, John? Welcome.
Representative DeVoe, representing House District 149, Caribou, New Sweden, and Westmoreland.
Thank you. Senator Bellows, back to you.
So my second question, and I think this deals with land acquisition, but one of the concerns that really surfaced in the public hearings and the prior work sessions is the critical infrastructure needs of tribal communities, and particularly when it comes to housing and addressing homelessness, and also with regards to water quality and looking and seeing what's happening with water quality at Pleasant Point. It seems to be a significant problem. So in terms of what the governor's office is willing to entertain and what the attorney general's office is willing to work through with the tribes, and I guess from the tribal attorneys' perspectives, what aspects of the language in the original bill are most important in terms of your ability to meet your critical infrastructure needs, and are those pieces of the bill still on the table? And that seemed to be, just criminal jurisdiction is super important, taxation is super important, but I'm also thinking about land acquisition and that ability to develop critical infrastructure.
Mr. Hinton, you want to answer that?
I would be happy to address that. Thank you, Senator Bellows, for the questions. I've highlighted the critical infrastructure needs at Passamaquoddy on a couple of occasions. And as I mentioned earlier, the need to address those problems has really only been exacerbated as a result of this pandemic. There's been quite a few articles written in national papers over the last several months talking about how where there are existing water quality problems that existed before this pandemic, where your water is not clean, but now you have to wash your hands more often and drink that water, all of those problems become worse when you're forced to continue to use that problem. It doesn't help the pandemic response. So we're dealing with those issues, and we I think we'll be having more discussions with the governor's office around land acquisition issues. We did get into that a little bit yesterday. And I think that there's certainly, at least I'm hopeful that there's room to move forward on that. And I'll just leave it at that and open the floor to other attorneys. Thank you.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that issue?
Ms. Tissner does.
Go ahead, Lynn. Yep.
Sorry, I keep calling her name out. She's on mute. I see her raising her hand.
Who did I miss?
Did you want to address that, Allison? Okay. I would just like to say that I was trying to find the email where I looked into that after one of the earlier discussions that we had this week. And it's my understanding that the water system that we're talking about is not owned by the tribes. It is owned by one of the cities in the area, and that it is understood that it is inadequate in terms of capacity as well as quality. The state's drinking water program has been working on that for a while with the federal EPA. And so that continues to be a high priority project for them. I can try to find out more about that if you would like.
And the only thing I would add to that, this is Allison Binney, is we are talking about land acquisition. We had conversations with both the governor's office and the attorney general's office about the land acquisition language in LD 2094 yesterday. So it is definitely something that's on the table and being productively discussed. And I think we're hoping that after today or tomorrow, we'll kind of have a concrete proposal of some type, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I just want to let the members of the committee know that is an issue that is being fully discussed.
I wanted,
Thank you.
If I could, I wanted to circle back to the first part of Senator Bellows' question. And that is part of what she put in the chat, which is the fundamental idea that the tribes in Maine will enjoy the rights and the powers, privileges, duties of other federally recognized Indian tribes. I think when we talk to the chiefs, or rather when the chiefs talk to us, that's the grounding. That was the purpose of the task force. That was the starting point. That's the premise that underlines all of LD 2094, is the need for a modernization of the relationship and a need for a paradigm shift. And so I think the important thing that we are hearing from the tribal chiefs, and that I think for the committee is important, is that as we think about potential components of LD 2094, and if there is to be movement forward, and we appreciate the engagement of the governor's office and of course the attorney general's office, that those steps forward need to be consistent with the language that Senator Bellows put in the chat. It needs to be consistent with what the goal of the task force was in the first instance, which was to move in this direction of a shift. And so I think that's what we're going to be looking for this week, is that we're talking here about amendments to the Implementing Act and amendments that will move us all steps that will be consistent with what that fundamental purpose language is in 6202. So I just kind of wanted to underscore that. And then with respect to the second part about federal Indian law applies, that is obviously a critical piece of that. And you all, invested a lot of time and resources in a report that identified federal laws that are potentially implicated. So that resource is out there. I will say it's one that we've consistently pushed in our discussions with the Attorney General's office, and this week the governor's office. Back at the end of March, I circulated some language tweaks that we had discussed with the Attorney General's office right when the pandemic hit, that would help bring further clarity to the language in 6202 Part 2, and then the related sections of LD 2094, so that we could make as strong as possible the language in the bill that Senator Bellows had crafted and you all had worked on to make federal beneficial laws apply without barriers. So we did our work to do what we could with a belt and suspenders approach there. And I think the message that we're hearing is that that there are certain beneficial federal laws that are of a great policy concern. Within the governor's office, gaming is one that folks have talked about. And so that's one where we just have, I will just say that we haven't gotten traction in moving that forward right now. But I will say that I know from my client's perspective, and Chief Sabatis or the other chiefs and vice chiefs on this call can speak to this, that's really important piece moving forward as we talk about maintaining a commitment, is ensuring that those federal resources are able to come to the tribes in the state of Maine, which is ultimately of a huge, huge benefit to all of us and all of you and everyone in your communities.
Thank you. Chief Sabatis, did you have something I couldn't tell whether you had your hand up, whether you were waving at me or what?
No, I was trying to stop my video for a second so I could pick up my phone.
Okay, thank you. With regard to the discussions between the various parties between now and Friday, Sam, I believe, sent from the Legislative Analyst Office, if you have language that you think you want to bring back to us, would you get that to him as quickly as you can, so he can take a look at it and do whatever he would need to do so we can consider it between now and we can consider it on Friday. And again, back to Representative Evangelos' point, I don't have a problem asking for another work session next week if we need to. And I think if we were close to having something that might go forward in a special session, I would bet we'd be able to get it. Maybe not. But Representative Cardone, do you have a question? Thank you. All right, so if we're finished with that, then I'm going to ask the folks that have been negotiating or discussing to continue to work and just let us know where you are sometime the next day or so between now and Friday. You have a lot of time on your hands to get this stuff done. I really do appreciate all the work on behalf of the tribes, the governor's office. This is what we were hoping for at the very beginning of this process. I realize it's agonizingly slow, but I think we are making progress. I think at this point, I'm going to turn back to Peggy, and the committee is going to look at what our options are. Have we all been now provided with a copy of the options page, if you will, about going forward? And that's not too, we're absolutely not foreclosing any other piece of agreement that might come out between now and Friday, or now and whenever. Representative Cardone.
I'm getting some communication that says that this is not being broadcast over the YouTube channel. Are we supposed to be on the state YouTube channel at this point?
I have no idea.
Is this a public discussion that we're having?
Absolutely.
Then it should be, and I don't know that it is.
Representative, I'll email IT.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. All right, so Peggy,
Yes.
let's talk about our options.
Sure. Actually, I'm seeing it on YouTube.
Okay. Barbara, did you hear that?
Then the person who is emailing me is the problem.
So I actually just tuned into YouTube and it is on.
Thank you. So it's your constituent, Representative Cardone.
Maybe they didn't pick the days
Something
listed.
like that.
The days listed on the Judiciary channel are not in order. So they might not, you have to kind of pick, figure out which day.
All right, Peggy, let's look at our options.
So, right, you asked me to look at what are the possible vehicles to make sure that the task force's work can continue. The task force was created by a joint order. Joint orders usually don't have any authority beyond the legislature in which they're passed. So the 129th goes out of existence when the 130th is sworn in, and I think that's December 1st this year. So unless you're thinking of, a really short term, you're going to have to do something other than a joint order. And also for a joint order, you need a joint order is passed by the House and the Senate. And we obviously aren't in that situation quite now for a session to go forward with that. So
so let me just interrupt you. From my perspective, and we can talk about this around the horseshoe, we're not talking about something short term. We are all dispensable on this committee. None of us know who's going to be back on the 130th. Obviously, pretty obviously based upon history, some of us will, some of us won't. What's important not to lose here is not us individually, but whatever trust has been built up over the past year. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. And so if there's a process that we can put together here that goes forward, regardless of who has this microphone, that's what I'm looking to do. And I just got kicked off again. What did they say? Something wrong? Okay, Peggy.
Okay, so then I guess the next question would be, are you talking about, we know it's not short term, how long term? are you planning on making this? If it's going to be, 2, 3, 4 years, then that's still, we're still talking about legislation, but you could do that in a resolve. You could do that in unallocated language in a bigger public law chapter. You might be able to do it in a private and special law, but those are all legislative options. If you want to make it more permanent, like the Right to Know Advisory Committee or the Citizen Trade Policy Committee, you can also do that and actually allocate it to statutes, so it would show up in the main revised statutes. The governor could also, if the governor is willing, extend this by creating an executive order that, and that's something that could happen right away. Those other legislative options I'm talking about wouldn't happen until the legislature comes back in session.
Right. So we've got, at this point, I am not optimistic that the legislature is going to come back into session. What I would suggest, and let's talk about it, what I would suggest would be that we might ask you to put together a resolve that would keep in existence the task force as it's currently constituted, not by name individual, but by category, just the way it was originally constituted, through the 130th legislature. And that takes off some pressure as far as, obviously we don't have to fill up all that time, or you don't have to fill up all that time, but it would give us that. And if we don't come back and put that together in the form of a resolve, if that doesn't come to pass because we don't come back into session, then we would certainly ask the governor's office to create a mirror image of our task force by executive order. I'm looking around the horseshoe for a comment. Representative Bailey.
So my only concern with that is that I think not only do I want to see some iteration of the task force or a commission or something going forward, but also to tie that into continuing the dialogue with the governor's office, continue the work forward. So I guess I just want to, again, have people discuss what that might look like as well. So I don't want to lose sight of that. I mean, I think for me, it's more than just continuing the task force. It's more continuing the dialogue, continuing the momentum, setting up an entity that as the dialogue continues, that can then make recommendations and or submit legislation, again, like the Right to Know Advisory Committee, perhaps recommend legislation to the Judiciary Committee. I mean, I'm open to what that looks like, but I want to ensure that, again, we continue the work that has been started, and that we don't lose that momentum.
Thank you. Senator Bellows, you have your hand up.
I concur in large part with Representative Bailey. I think one of the really challenging things about where we are is, honestly, in my legislative career, I haven't seen so much work go into a single piece of legislation. And obviously, it's very significant in terms of the state's relationship with the tribes, and it touches on just an enormous body of law, right? It touches on many, many different committee jurisdictions, for example. But it feels like there was a task force, and then there were the hearings and multiple work sessions. So I think it's really important that whatever we decide in terms of how this moves forward is inclusive and is continuing work, not just delaying or kicking hard decisions down the road. So if there's a genuine commitment to moving forward, then that's one thing. And if everyone is in agreement. But if there's just a fundamental disagreement and things aren't going to move forward, then I want to make sure that this isn't something that's in name only.
I agree. Other comments or thoughts or otherwise, Representative Evangelos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, I hope your comment about us not coming back was just a speculation and not an informed speculation, because, you know, this work is so important that we've accomplished. And, you know, if we can go to Walmart and go to Hannaford, I don't understand why we can't sit in the Civic Center and hold a legislative session.
Because the Constitution says there are only two ways for us to come back into session. The majority of the members of the political parties of both branches have to agree. That has not happened, number one. Number two, the other option is for the governor to call us back. That has not happened. Arrangements were made, as I understand it, for the Civic Center to be able to do social distancing and try to keep everybody safe. Talking about over 300 people that are involved in the legislature once all the members are here, and staff and all that. So those arrangements were made. We were prepared to come back into session. That didn't happen. Has not happened yet, and I have no idea. I'm not privy to any behind the scenes discussions. I'm not aware of anything that's going on or not going on. Okay, so is the committee, are the committee members available here okay with Peggy beginning the drafting process for a resolve going forward? Representative Bailey.
What is this resolve going to say? And again, what happens if we don't come back into session?
If we don't, the resolve would, again, I'll turn that back to Peggy. What I had outlined was a resolve that would pass, that would keep this task force as currently constituted by category but not by name, in existence through the 130th legislature. If we don't come back into session, we never get a chance to vote on that. Alternatively, we could certainly draft a letter to the governor on behalf of the Judiciary Committee, on behalf of the task force, I guess, asking that the governor constitute some working group, whether it's called the same by the same name or otherwise, to continue the work moving forward. I'm sorry? Yes, I've lost the screen, but Miss Linda Pisner, are you still with us? Would you give us your thoughts on that process, on the propriety of that type of a process? Linda Pisner, can you hear me? You may be
mute.
You may be muted.
I think my problem is that with the mask on, I don't get articulation, even with all my complicated hearing support. So you could give it a shot and I'll try my best to answer whatever you're trying to ask me.
Okay, so I'm directing, or we're considering directing our committee analyst to draft a resolve that would keep this task force intact going forward beyond the end of this under the end of this legislature. If that does not come to fruition because the legislature never comes back into session again until we all expire, then we would perhaps draft a letter to the chief executive asking her to, by executive order, constitute, stand up some sort of body process consistent with the makeup of the current task force.
So if I'm understanding right, you would ask for an executive order to stand up a group right away that would work through the end of the year and then report back to the task force? Or have I got that? Is that right?
No, I don't think you'd have to do it right away, but just you're our fallback. You're our default position, if you will, if the legislature never comes back to consider the resolve that we're putting together. And I would ask
So
the
we
governor to
continue this.
basically do the same thing by executive order.
Yeah, I can take that proposal right into the governor and get back to you today.
Thank you. That would be great. Oh, Representative Bailey?
So again, the piece that's missing for me is, so you have this task force, what are they going to do and how is that going to continue the dialogue and negotiations with the interested parties, including the governor's office?
I'm going to look to Peggy for drafting purposes, but what I want is a continuation of this process, either by legislative fiat or by executive order. And we don't have to ask the executive to do anything if we come back into session and can do something by resolution, by resolve.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not sure how exactly you direct people to, I mean, we can, when we put the language together, we can certainly say that the intent is to continue the negotiations and the discussions that have already started under the task force that was created by the joint order. We can,
right,
write that in as the intention. I'm not sure that we can force anybody to do that.
No,
but-
and I didn't mean to imply that. If I used the incorrect words, I apologize. No, I understand we couldn't direct the executive as to what she should do.
You could certainly write a letter to the executive
Right.
explaining what you would like to see in the executive order.
Right. And that's what I would anticipate we would do, and maybe draft that letter, maybe draft such a letter between now and Friday, and have it contingent upon the failure of the legislature to return. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm not sure. I mean, the legislature could come back in October or,
Right.
depending on what the various needs are. So I'm not sure if you want to, we can talk about that on Friday, about a deadline for the legislature to pick up any work and pass the resolve. I mean, I work for the legislature for years and years and years. So I always think the only tool I have is a piece of legislation. And I know that that's not true. There are other things you can do. One of those is a letter to the chief executive. You could also write a letter to the attorney general to include all that going on.
Right, thank you. And I understand that. I just do think that once we miss the August opportunity for a legislative session, the closer you get to November, the more difficult it's going to be to get people to come in here. And so I'm not, while I'm an optimistic human being, I'm not optimistic about that. Other comments or questions or thoughts? We can't vote on any of this because we are not legally constituted as the committee at this point, but Representative Bailey, what else can we do today? Pardon? Right. So, Peggy, do you have anything else for us to do today? I'm sorry.
I don't really, but you do have a couple of other bills, the two consultation bills that are pending before you. And I don't know if that's something that you want to talk about before everything else is resolved.
That's a good point. Representative Cardone had a question also. Oh, okay. Yeah, we absolutely, I guess I forgot about them. Okay, so we have now the tribal attorneys and the representatives of the executive and the Attorney General's office working on 2094. Let me ask a question of the parties who have been talking. have you discussed the component parts of either 1392 or 2118 as a part of your discussions? Mr. Taub, can you weigh in on that?
We have talked a bit about consultation, and I believe that is something that we will be talking about in the next 2 days as well.
Okay. Mr. Hinton and Ms. Binney, would you agree with that?
I would, if I could, Senator Carpenter, I guess I would just comment that, I think going back earlier in this summer, prior to the engagement with the governor's office, the tribal attorneys and the attorney general's office, and this also kicks back to March, we had some good discussions about particular aspects of 2118. As you may recall from I believe it was a public hearing, where there was some testimony from governor's counsel, as well as I believe the attorney general's office, as to, questions, concerns that were raised there. So based on that, we use that as a blueprint for discussions then later in March, as well as then earlier this summer about, where some of those, issues concerns were on the consultation piece. This week, when we started the engagement with the governor's office, and I couldn't be part of the entire conversation yesterday, so somebody can jump in and correct me here if there's an update. But I think on Monday, the message that we received was that there were some concerns in the executive quarter about conceptually how to approach what we refer to as consultation. So I want to make sure, I guess, to be forthcoming with the committee here about, what is likely to be discussed in detail in the next 2 days and to be advanced in terms of language. And I guess I'm not sure that I've seen any indication that we're going to get engagement on that issue. So again, somebody may be able to correct me or if I'm wrong or provide an update from yesterday, but I just wanted to make sure to be frank about where I think that's at, which is that it may be one of those really key pieces that's very important to stay committed to moving forward.
And this is Ms. Binney. I would just agree with Mr. Taub. We did at the end of yesterday's call say we were going to talk about the consultation bills today and likely tomorrow. So they are, we didn't get a chance to go into a full discussion of them yesterday because we spent most of our time on tax and land acquisition, but we are planning on talking about the consultation bills today and tomorrow.
I would think that was important because I don't think it will be productive for us to try to craft language here that's not, try to craft a bill here that's not been discussed at least or substantially agreed to. And I don't want anything that we would do to upset any other work that's going on other matters. Senator Bellows, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, looking at those two bills, well, 2118 and 1392, but some of the language in 2118 referenced the bicentennial and the historic nature of trying to change the relationship between state agencies and tribal authorities. So I just wanted to voice to the Attorney General's office and to the Governor's office that I really hope that we can get to yes on some language to pass in 2020. And because I think that there's some real importance here in demonstrating a good faith commitment to changing the relationship with the tribes in a permanent and substantive way that's not contingent on the goodwill of any one executive or agency head in one moment. So I just feel like this particular issue is super, super important. I mean, they're all important. And But I feel like this is something very concrete, very tangible. We should be able to get to a place of yes.
Thank you. Other comments? So I would propose that we would leave all three of the bills we had on for today, still on for Friday. Wish you folks well. If any of us can be of help, please contact us and we'll all try to move forward, hopefully. On
Senator,
Friday.
could I just ask a quick question?
Sure. Absolutely. Hi, Chief.
Hi,
Sure.
sorry, I just wanted some clarification on, we were talking earlier about Representative Evangelos and others were talking about potentially asking for another work session next week and maybe the ability to extend the work at least for a short period of time. Are we committing that we're gonna ask for that, or?
That's an interesting idea. So let me go back to the negotiators for a second. We've put you under a pretty serious short time frame here. If we could get authority to come back in, say next Friday, a week from this Friday, in addition to this Friday, would that do you think that would help? I'm looking to Mr. Taub or Mr. Hinton or Ms. Binney. That's a very good point, Chief. If we take a little bit of pressure off, maybe, we've given you a lot to discuss and a lot to come. My leader is in the building today, and I'm pretty sure we could contact the speaker to see if we could get authority to do that. Another session next week. Would that help any? I guess is my question. I turn back.
I likely will not be here. I likely will not be here.
Okay.
I mean, in case it's contingent upon a quorum, I just want you to know.
Chair Carpenter, if I could respond to your question, I would just say that having been in all of these meetings with the governor's office and the attorney general's office to this point, I personally feel a rising level of cohesion in our work. And I really didn't feel like until we finished our meeting yesterday that we were really starting to get traction on a broad dialogue of issues. And at the end of that, the governor's staff committed to going to talk to the governor about a number of significant issues. And I respect the fact that those issues could very well require conversations internally in that office beyond today or tomorrow. We would, of course, do our very, very best to bring a final something to this group on Friday. But I will just say that having additional time to next week, I believe would be extraordinarily helpful. And I think that it would only facilitate our ability to dig into these issues a little bit more and to bring forward an agreement that is more palatable to the tribal leadership.
And I would agree with that, just because the tribal leaders have been asked really just recently to compromise on some very significant issues for them. And as the attorneys for one of those tribes, we've been trying to work through those issues, and they're tough issues and tough, I think, for the tribes to compromise on, given where they see tribes in the rest of the country are. I think having one more week does make a big difference. I think the drafting of the language is going to be really important, and working through the language once the concepts are agreed to. So I would strongly, recommend one more week.
And I agree completely with Corey and Alice. And I think the progress we made on Monday, I think it was very significant in that we really got down to some very specific issues that I think all the sides committed to trying to reach an agreement on. But there's still a lot of details that are going to have to be worked out. And I think both sides are going to have to go back to their respective, leadership to get direction and to work out those details. So I think, once we get even down to the issue of just drafting the language, I think that itself could take some time. So I guess this is all a long way of saying that I think the more time we have, the more progress we can make.
I'm also in agreement with that. I think I tried to lead with that. I was very pleased with the level of connection that we had in the discussion so far. I support that proposal as well.
Okay.
So I hope you're not waiting for me to answer something, because I was talking to our IT people to make sure, because our original guidance was no meetings after this week. But I just double checked that they should be able to, it's not their choice. I mean, they should have the resources to be able to do that. It's obviously the president and the speaker would have a say as to whether or not you can meet past this week. But it's not an IT issue, I guess. So good.
Thank you. And I don't speak for the president, I don't speak for the speaker, but I can imagine if we were close on language that they wouldn't give us a day. I'm going to go see, we're going to pause now until 11:50, and that'll give everybody here and all the people on the call to look at their calendars, to come up with some possible dates next week. I'm going to try to speak to the president to see, without getting a commitment at this point, but to see if he would consider giving us another date next week if we needed it. That would take a little bit of pressure off the folks that are doing the talking. So if you just bear with us, we'll be back in a few minutes.
And just let me tell you that Monday's out because appropriations is meeting.
Okay, and I really would like to have it in this room. Peggy, can you find out what days next week this room would be available?
Yes, I'll find that out.
Be back in a few minutes. All right, it's 11:50, so I'm going to call the subcommittee back to order. Representative Bailey and I have probably in record time secured an agreement from the Speaker and the Senate President that we would be allowed to have another day next week if we need it. And so at this point, we're looking at Thursday or Friday. Peggy, would you be able to contact the committee, the committee members who are not either present today or on the call to see if they would be able to participate? We would need a quorum in the building. We have 4 here today. I have not checked with Senator Bellows, but is she, I'm sure, assuming I can't see her on my screen at the moment. Senator Bellows, we're looking at Thursday or Friday.
That would work for me.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
we now have 5, Peggy, who could be present in the meeting, who are here today. So could I ask you or Soupy to contact the other committee members? Representative Cardone will not be available. If you would contact the other committee members to see if they could be, 2 more members need to be in the building in order to have a quorum. And I don't have a preference as to Thursday or Friday. I have, just throw those out as options. To the other folks on the call, we would still meet Friday of this week and take anything that you have to give us. If we need the day, a day next week, we now have it. If we don't need it, we won't use it. But it gives the negotiators a little more space, perhaps. Comments? And I don't have a screen. I don't have people on the screen, so you'll have to let me know if somebody has their hand raised. For some reason I'm... Okay, Lois, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't have you on my screen here, so I need to look up. Yeah, Representative Reckitt.
Yeah, I really apologize. I would love to be able to come, but next Thursday is all of the pre-operative meetings for my wife's surgery, so I have to be involved on Thursday.
Certainly, we understand.
Yeah.
We understand.
So actually, can I just follow up, Representative Reckitt? Does that mean, I mean, you're not planning on, you wouldn't be able to be here on Friday though, right? You're still not traveling.
I'm still not traveling. Yeah,
Okay.
Because we're at the pre-operative stuff now and trying.
Okay, of course, you're in quarantine. Yep. Okay.
But I should be able to be on the phone on Friday, and depending on how long you go, I could be on the phone part of the time Thursday, because her doctor's appointments are early in the morning. So thank you. I'm sorry, I apologize, but life is, you know. At least I've been keeping up. Thank you.
So as of now, appropriations is available. 228 is available on Thursday and Friday.
I would have to say I'd be extraordinarily surprised if Representative Talbot Ross did not manage to get there. So I know she was upset about not being there today because she's really committed to this issue. So, and the other option we have, if vital, and you can't get a 7th, is we could do the maneuver we've done with my seat periodically. And as much as I would hate to miss it, I would be willing to do that if it becomes necessary.
You're becoming our designated hitter.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, if I were a pitcher, I could go to the Red Sox because they have none.
Absolutely. They'd take Evangelos at this point. All right. So at this point, we will be notified once we know. To the folks on the call from the tribal community, and thank you so much for all your hard work. Mr. Taub, yourself, and Kim, appreciate all you've done. Governor's office, thanks again. Hopefully we'll have something to look at before the end of the week. And if not, we have a little bit more breathing room to come up with something. Thank you so much. Peggy, if there's nothing else you need for us, we're going to sign off. See you Friday. Thank you all very much. Now you ask.